This is the regular monthly meeting of the Alameda County Water District Board of Directors, and I'm going to turn this over to General Manager Ed Stevenson to make some housekeeping remarks here.
Sure. We'd like to welcome everybody to our board meeting on behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors. I'd like to welcome everybody's participation. My name is Ed Stevenson, and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present in person who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials for this meeting are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if you're participating by telephone audio. This board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. And I'll just note that the board will have a number of closed session topics near the end of the agenda. While the board convenes privately in closed session, members of the public may remain online if participating remotely or remain in the boardroom if attending in person in order to be informed of board reports once the closed sessions are concluded. Again, thank you all for attending, and that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Okay, wonderful. Vice President Gunther, would you like to lead us?
Certainly will.
Salute.
Do you guys want to do a quick roll call?
Oh,
Just
sorry.
to officially follow the agenda and start off.
I was trying to get through this faster than
Yeah,
I
no,
thought.
okay, we got there.
Roll
Directors Gunther,
Here.
Akbari,
Here.
Huang, here, Weed,
Here.
and Sethy.
Here. Okay, now the salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, at this time, we will accept public comments. Members of the public may address the board on any issues not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. 5-minute limit is customary. However, as board president, I may adjust the actual time allotted to accommodate the number of speakers. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so when that agenda item comes up. So are there any in-person or remote?
We do have a person who's attending remotely. Ken Nishimura's got his hand up.
Okay, Mr. Nishimura or Comet Nishimura?
Good evening, members of the board. A bit over 3 weeks ago, we received a door hanger informing us that we would be receiving our new AMI-enabled water meter. Unfortunately, we have yet to receive our new meter, and having been 16 business days, my cat is running out of her fingers and toes to keep track. Nothing wrong with our positive displacement mechanical meter, but if ACWD is really running behind the planned schedule, it may be useful for our other customers to indicate a new schedule so that they may plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I just, in fact, received my notice in the mail yesterday for my neighborhood. Okay, we'll move on. Are there any other public comments? Not seeing any. I will close public comments and move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion from the board member?
I'll make the motion to add items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4 to the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang, aye, Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. So I'm going to turn item 5.5 over to
Another motion.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I'm rushing through here.
And President Sethy, just quickly, we do have a hand up from a member of the public, Kelly A.
Mr. Abreu, is this regarding one of the items on the agenda, or is this a public comment?
Item 5.3. which is the USGS stream gauging. Just wanted to note that, I thought stream gauging is easy, and I never thought much about it, but I guess it's more complicated than I knew. It's kind of like, these water meters things that are a little bit complicated once you get inside of them. And what happened at upstream of Sinol, in a place called Verona, which is like half a mile upstream on Alameda Creek, somewhere up there, Arroyo La Laguna, at the last flood, a lot of these stream gauges, it's really not very important how. It's a little bit important to measure the stream, how it's behaving during a normal day, but during the peak flow of the big flood, it topped out. It like maxed out at it hit a ceiling at 23 feet, which was bad, very bad, because you really need to know what the peak flow is, right? Need to capture that whole peak and see where the tippity top is in these floods. Just want to point out that USGS, that was not good, and they need to make sure that not try to avoid that in the future. Thanks.
I have a question for council. Do we need to amend the consent calendar motion and take this item out separately?
No, not
Okay.
unless the directors have any comments. So it was appropriate for the public to comment on one of the items that was on the consent, and that's been done. So board can proceed.
Thank you.
Mr. Aber, those were really good and welcome comments. I hope our staff will take that into consideration when they're talking with planting in the new stream gauges. So we have an adopted, we've have a consent calendar with action calendars added.
I will move the consent calendar as amended.
I will second with the comment that I was not at the board meeting on August 10th, and that is reflected in the meetings as appropriate.
Okay, so we can take the roll here.
Okay. Directors Gunther, Akbari,
Aye.
Huang, aye, Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. So we will now move on to item 5.5, and I'm going to turn this item over to our staff to walk us through
Sure.
this agreement.
Sure, President Sethy. Item 5.5 is resolution authorizing the general manager to execute an agreement for water purchase between ACWD and the West Side districts, and to take related actions, and determining actions are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And this is something the board has heard a bit about in the past, but we're very happy to be in a position to bring this to the board for authorization. I'll turn it over to our Director of Water Resources, Ms. Heides.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. This year's extreme shift from dry to wet has presented a really exciting opportunity this year. So to share all the details about that opportunity that we're looking to make some progress on tonight is Kelsey Oshiro, one of our water resources engineers who's been working hard on this project. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. And I also just want to acknowledge we have Water Supply and Planning Manager Thomas Nizer online as well, who's in support of this item and the work being done. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey to get us going.
Great, thank you, Ms. Heides. Great. Good afternoon, public members of the board. Thank you for having me today. I wanted to present on the potential water transfer between ACWD and the West Side districts. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so this potential water transfer is based on that we have a surplus of State Water Project or SWP allocations of 2023 water supplies. And I just want to emphasize that this surplus exceeds both our anticipated demands and what can be delivered for storage. And so we were looking into this potential water transfer with the West Side districts, and we'll go into the who and where the West Side districts are in the next couple of slides. And so this potential water transfer would be in a new water purchase term sheet agreement, which would allow us to sell up to 20,000 acre feet of, again, our surplus State Water Project supplies to these West Side districts. The current unit cost of water is for this transfer would be $125 per acre foot. And if this water transfer did occur, it would occur in later this year through early next year in 2024. And under CEQA, it would be a notice of exemption. This water transfer would occur under the new water management tools that became effective in 2021 under the latest amendment in the State Water Project contract. And these water management tools allows for improved processes for transfers and exchanges, also adds flexibility and tools for single and multi-year transfers under Article 56 of the amendment. And in this potential transfer, it would be a single year transfer. DWR would still review and approve the required documents under the water management tools, so they would definitely be involved throughout the process. I just want to note here that this is a common amendment for all agencies, and this is it helps streamline the process for transfers and exchanges amongst the state water project contractors. And so the West Side districts consist of several districts here, which include the Burinda Mesa Water District, the Bell Ridge Water Storage District, Lost Hills Water District, Wheeler Ridge Maricopa Water Storage District, and Dudley Ridge Water District. So all these districts are with Kern County Water Agency as well, except for Dudley Ridge. Dudley Ridge is actually located in Kings County, just north of Kern County. And here's a map depicting very broadly or generally where the West Side districts are located. So they're located down in Kern County, with the exception of Dudley Ridge, who's located in Kings County, down where the arrow's pointing, and they actually straddle the California Aqueduct. Next slide. So our next steps is to consider our recommendation to approve a proposed water transfer. And if it is approved, it would include executing the agreement, submitting the notice of exemption to Alameda County Clerk and the California Office of Planning and Research. And we would continue our work with finalizing our documents with DWR. And so our staff recommendations are as follows: to consider the adoption of a resolution, which one, authorizing the general manager to execute an agreement for water purchase between ACWD and the West Side districts for transfer of up to 20,000 acre feet of Alameda County Water District State Water Project water supplies to West Side districts for $125 per acre foot. 2, directing staff to perform related actions necessary to effectuate the water transfer, including work with the Department of Water Resources to execute the sale and transfer of water by submitting associated filings, such as including the contract information form and Article 57G letter. And 3, determining the actions are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and take any questions.
May I kick things off, because I had explored some questions with the staff, and I would like to, I already have the answer, but I would like to bring the information to the forefront here. So first of all, where is the water currently being stored that we're transferring?
Oh, for the transfer?
Yeah, is this up in Oroville or San Luis or down in Semi-Tropic?
Oh, right. So this is all our Table A allocation. So
So the water would be transferred from Oroville. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, it originates in Oroville, yeah, State Water Project. And then it would be coming down the delta through the different reaches, and then it would be transferred in a reach closer to the West Side district.
Okay, I also asked the question if we had any other additional supplemental water supplies for sale or to sell.
Oh, beyond the 20,000
Right.
acre feet. No, it would just be up to the 20,000 acre.
Didn't hear the answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. It would just be up to the 20,000 acre feet.
Right, so we do not have any other excess water above that.
For this area. Mhm.
Okay. The other question I asked was, does this require the approval of their board?
No, just not for their board. Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And, oh. Okay, so you already answered, it's table A, it's not Article 56 water or anything.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
turn it over to the other board members here.
Okay, I'm confused about the table, Article 57 and Table A, but those would be separate categories, and this is not a, this is just a, to me, I read that was it could be table A operated under Article 57.
Oh,
Article 57 is the ability to make the
Yes,
transfers.
it's not in Article 57 water, it is table A water, which is helpful.
Right.
Just a technical question, why are we only notifying the Alameda County clerk and not the county of receipt?
That's a good question.
And there's no need for an answer now, but
Oh.
it just struck me that if we have a chance to double check that.
We can double check that. Yeah, I think it's per the CEQA guidelines, but I can double check. Mhm.
Thank you.
No question, just comment that this is exciting. We get to try out a new tool to actually see if it will offer us additional flexibility. And this is a good time for this experiment since this water would otherwise go down the river since we can use or store it. So yeah, I definitely support this idea.
Thank you.
No additional questions.
It's been a crazy year. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I see it. So I'm also very much in favor of this ability to transfer water. I mean, it's been 2 decades that we've been talking about the ability to market water in the state of California to other or among different state water contractors, and this should be one of the more significant ones that has been undertaken under the new Article 57 rules that were adopted by the contractors. So I'm really excited to see this. And I would only have you consider, I'm not instructing staff to do this, but consider whether you might want to put this in the Aqua newsletter as an example of what these agencies have been able to accomplish here. I think it might be really informative for the rest of the California water industry. So I see that we have a hand up from Mr. Abreu. Would you like to comment on this item, please?
Yes. First of all, I want to, having written a paper on this subject of these water transfers, one of the landmarks in this was the Monterey Agreement, which happened about 25 or 30 years ago, and the Monterey Agreement gave the Kern County water bank to private parties. So these people that you're selling the water to, they probably are not going to be dumping all this water on their almond trees. They're going to be storing it in large aquifers, and the strategic nature of the Kern County water banks and that Kern aquifer is huge for them, because they can suck up water for free, almost $125 that you're giving it to them, and then later on they'll come back and sell it back to you at a different price that is probably going to be higher. But I'm also that's just an academic point. I'm very concerned about the what looks like a lack of sophistication when it comes to the pricing of this thing. The same thing happened over in another neighboring water agency here, where they sold them water at the exact same price, $125. If you look at the NASDAQ Velas California Water Index futures, and you look at look at December or March of coming up, which is right around the time, the futures price is the best indicator of what is the value of water transfers at that time, at the end of this year or early next year, and it's around $200, $190, $205, whatever. Let's say $200 an acre foot, and you're selling water that's worth why don't you go and do, I don't know, there should be some, so you could play both sides of this transaction, couldn't you? You could buy futures or buy puts or whatever, and do it right now and buy back the water at $200 an acre foot and sell it now for 125 or whatever, because you're right now, by giving it away at 125 in the future at the end of this year, it seems to me you're vastly underpricing this. This is this is 1/3 off or 40% off the real value of water as indicated in the futures market. And this NASDAQ Velas index is exactly designed and built and constructed and specially fabricated to offer a market pricing mechanism to give you the price information that you need as sellers. And by giving, by not using that information and just saying, okay, $125, that sounds good. I think you need to bring in, really, and this is going to be happening over and over and over and over again. And if people just, are blind to the real value of the water as indicated in the futures markets, the sellers, in this case, ACWD, are going to get screwed. And they are getting screwed. I think ACWD is getting shafted, sent up the river here. And I think, we need to really use the information in the futures markets and maybe play around with, puts and calls or whatever, bring in, do some sophisticated stuff with the financial markets so that this doesn't happen anymore. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Abreu. I will inform you that all parties to this agreement do follow the NASDAQ Velas California Water Index pretty closely. And I know at the low of the period under which we were talking about an agreement that it was around $125. That's just my personal recollection, but you are correct. It goes up and down. And we know at the height of the drought that water futures were selling for as high as 2,500 an acre foot. So it's very volatile. We're 90% below, more than 90% below where we were at the height of the drought on the sale of water here on this index. So thank you for those comments. Again, they're really welcome. So I will, are there any more questions from the board?
I actually was going to ask staff to perhaps quickly clarify how we come up with $125 per acre foot and the fact that this is actually not a free market. We're under a pretty heavy constraint in terms of who could sell the water to. And that definitely does have an impact on why we end up with this number.
Correct. And so one of the things that's special about this particular transfer is it is being done as Oshira talked about under the State Water Project water management tools. So we're only allowed to trade water amongst the State Water Project family. And so that is part of what drives the price. Doing a transfer that would be sort of on the open market or open to more possibilities would also be subject to a lot more constraints and a lot more hurdles that we would have to jump through should we try to execute a more complicated transfer outside of the State Water Project family. And there's certain time windows that those need to be done within. So there's a lot more complexity and constraints there. So, and actually, I know we've had questions about the water index before. And so I also want to open it up if Mr. Neiser has any comments on that online, because that's something we do watch, but it doesn't necessarily impact exactly the types of transfers that we would jump into, given how it works and how it works with these folks at the West Side District. They watch it as well, but they've indicated too, it's not necessarily the only factor that they look at in setting their price.
May I add to your comments quickly, Ms. Heides, before you turn it over to Mr. Neiser? Director Weed and I actually sat in a program for a day with the founders of this index in the Central Valley. And you're very much correct that given the parameters that we have within the state water contractors, they have a certain pricing mechanism that they're using. And they're not in the business of trying to make profit off people. This index is primarily driven not by the water agencies, but by the growers in the Central Valley. So if you have a large almond or walnut farm, or you're growing, peaches or something, and you want to secure your rights to water, this is the way that you cover or hedge for the future. And so you pay a premium in the price of water if you are a grower. It's not the same as what occurs among water agencies.
Thank you. And if Mr. Niser's online, it looks like he may have some thoughts as well.
Sure. I mean, everything is spot on. I would just add 2 points. To Director Sethy's point, it's exactly correct. The index is reflecting what water prices are going on. Many of the prices in water that's being transacted right now is was negotiated 5 years ago, and these are just being executed now, and they're triggered by a number of market indicators from the ag side that we're not privy to. So it's just, we need to keep in mind that it's just a reflection at a point in time. But I did want to address one comment about the ability to sort of game this and wait for spiking prices and things. And that it's not like a digital asset that can just be held on to. This is water that's subject to what we call spill. And come December 31st, it will be reverted to just general supplies for the state. So this is basically a use it or lose it asset. And by being able to take advantage of this transaction within the State Water Project contractors family, this district is going to bring in upwards of $2 million to help offset cost increases of pressure on rates that we would otherwise just lose due to the prevailing wet conditions that we experienced this year. So it's not something we can hold on to and wait for a dry year and make more money off of. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you. All right, so why don't we try to wrap this up? Are there any other last minute staff?
Nope.
Nope.
Unless there are further questions.
Board comments? No more public comments, so why don't we have a proposed
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang, Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. So we'll move on to item 6, reports. Any comments on any of the reports that we have? No public comments. Okay, so we'll move on to item 6.2, operational reports. Any comments there? Okay. I'll turn to Mr. Nishimura first, and then I'll come back to the board.
Yeah, so thank you, President Sethy. I just wanted to make my standard comment regarding the hardness. Again, even though it looks like the water that we're getting from the State Water Project is softer than usual. And I'm glad to see that the district was once again able to deliver water significantly below the target of 150 milligrams per liter. I also noticed that we are trending slightly higher in water sales or water consumption production than predicted in both July and August. I believe part of that is probably due to the abnormally hot weather we had earlier this summer, but I just kind of curious to know if this is a trend that we should be expecting to see, or whether the production will come back down to what is estimated. Thank you.
Like staff to take a quick stab at an answer to that?
Sure.
Hey, Mr. Irons?
I can't really comment on future demands. Actually, Laura, do you have Projections?
That's a great question. We do anticipate over the course of the next several months, we're going to see the numbers start coming down due to the seasonal change. As far as future years, we're continuing to watch that. We will be updating our demand forecast in the next couple of years as part of our IRP project, making some updates there, but we're continuing to watch what the bounce back is from the drought. So we have seen a little bit uptick in a few months this year. But it kind of remains to be seen how low we get during the winter months to our baseline, if we get back to that same level, or if we start to see some creeping up of the sort of baseline demand in the wintertime.
Actually, we've done pretty well for the year. We were running under our forecast at the beginning of the year, then even, and it's only the last 2 months where it topped over a little bit. So our water conservation promotions out to the community, I think, have been effective. That's my personal view. Comments by any board members? I have one on one item. I wanted to speak to item 6.2.8, the unfunded liability status report. Really to highlight this for public consumption, that you can look around at a lot of government agencies in the area, and you see the trend for ACWD over the last decade, where we've made a concerted effort to pay down our unfunded liabilities. We're really in a very excellent position when it comes to pensions, and our other post-employment benefits also has been on a really nice trend upward as well. And Director Weed and I went through this at our recent finance meeting. And, you know, if you look like at the city of Fremont or any of the cities around here, school districts, they're barely covering what they need to for the future. So I'm really proud of the fact that we have made the commitment to invest in paying down these liabilities, because this really helps to bring down expected rate increases and things like that in the future. So good work to everybody, board and staff. Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll move to item 6.3. Are there any last minute staff presentations?
Nope, we put them in GM's reports.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 6.4, general manager's reports.
Okay, the first item, 6.4.1, is a potential legislative proposal concept for state-funded direct installation turf replacement program for income qualified customers. And this is something that has come up a couple of times in director's comments, and there's been some discussion, and staff's been looking into, well, what would that look like? Is there a role for ACWD to play here? And so I think I'll turn it over to Ms. Heides to start us off.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So as Mr. Stevenson mentioned, this is something that we have heard from director's comments and staff has been diving into a bit. We're here tonight to kind of get some feedback from the board on how much further, or whether we want to continue working to explore this more. And so I'm really pleased to introduce to you tonight Kieran Kaur, who is one of our water use efficiency specialists, who has been digging into these issues and is here to present tonight briefly. And we're excited to hear the board's feedback. And I also want to acknowledge Megan Moreno, who's in the audience, who's been supporting this item as well in the water use efficiency team. So I will just go ahead and turn it over to Kieran to let you know what we've been up to.
Thank you for that introduction, Ms. Heides. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kieran Kaur. I work with the water use efficiency team. I will be presenting item 6.4.1, which is a potential legislative proposal concept for a state-funded direct installation turf replacement program for income qualified customers. The background for this concept is the state's priority to reduce outdoor irrigation. The California Water Supply Strategy aims to remove 500 million square feet of turf by 2030. Emerging regulations, which the Water Resources Group has been reviewing and providing public comments for, will require significant reductions in outdoor irrigation throughout the state. Other legislature, such as AB 1572, is considering banning the use of potable water to irrigate non-functional turf. So the main point here is that further turf removal is key to achieving this priority. ACWD and other local agencies with turf replacement programs have found that there are barriers to customer participation, such as high upfront costs, somewhat complicated design and installation processes, and that these projects can be time and energy intensive. So, a potential solution that we understand may be of interest to some board members is a state-funded program that directly removes turf and installs water-efficient landscapes for income-qualified customers. This program will address high costs and design and installation obstacles for participation, as we see in our own Lawn Be Gone rebate program. It will also provide environmental benefits throughout the state, such as decreased outdoor water use, decreased carbon footprints, and increased biodiversity and natural habitats for pollinators. There are various program models and considerations, but for tonight, the main point is that staff is seeking board input on exploring this potential legislative proposal concept with local legislators. Thank you.
And so with that background, we're just interested to answer any questions and hear any feedback that the board may have.
We'll start at the end of the board here. Read.
I'll be interested in reviewing the cost benefit analysis when it's available.
Yes. We have started preliminary research into that, so once it's available,
Yeah,
I'll
thank you.
share that.
I know this is a state-funded and direct installation, but I am curious as to how much burden would it be placed on ACWD? Do we need to provide any sort of oversight, and how much staff cost and effort that we have to contribute?
That would be part of the proposal. Our staff is primarily encouraging that the state take on the responsibility of handling applications and
So
implementing the program.
It will be a direct application to the state, and we perhaps would just recommend our customers or do outreach. Is that the vision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we're not making any promises about how this might evolve in discussions with legislators and so forth too. It's kind of, here's a possibility. We didn't want to take it any further until we hear from the board. But yeah, so we don't know where the discussions might go, but that's what staff's envisioning.
Okay.
So I think I'd be open to a variety of different program models. I don't know that I currently have one that I would favor. I think the idea of it being handled at the state level is probably better and would make it a little bit more accessible to ratepayers across the state. And it just alleviates the burden of administration at a district by district level. So I like that idea. I personally would actually be a little bit more inclined on seeing a program that's universal rather than one that's just for income qualified customers, because as we've seen with even our own low income rate assistance program, there's people who fall outside of that qualification who still would greatly benefit from some a rebate like this, I guess. So I would probably just make that recommendation, that I would probably want to see something that's a little bit more universal rather than something that's income delineated. Also, there's a big gap between folks who live in the metropolitan areas and how much they earn and what would be considered kind of average living expenses for those folks versus folks that live in like Central California. So I feel like the program would be better administered if it were universal. That's all the feedback I have for you right now, but I'm really curious to see what other programs we can model this after that the state has already implemented or at least considered implementing, and maybe we can kind of use that as a model for this.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's good to have a good, healthy debate among board members, and I'm going to differ with Director Akbari quite a bit here. I proposed this idea earlier in the year when I saw that the State Water Board had made grants out to specific water districts in the state for the first time to do direct installs. So the funding was provided to the agency, and then the agency set up a list of landscape contractors, resources that could be leveraged, so that if you are an hour service district, all you have to do is call one of the members of our staff. Right now, the system is very cumbersome to go through, even with our staff as is, with the BOSCA money that we get and other grants. So this simplifies the process when you get a state grant from the State Water Board or proposition money, so that you can streamline what is going on in the district right now. That's one of the purposes, is to lower the staff effort here at our district, another district, and make this very easy so that someone can just call in, say, hey, I'd like to replace my lawn, put in efficient native gardening, and you can quickly do it. And if we have a list of contractors that are available and they know they're getting paid directly from the district, well, that makes it really easy, right? Currently, people that are at the wealthy end of our community are the ones that take most advantage of the Lawn Begone rebate program, because people at the lower, maybe lower income, middle income, cannot afford to do all the work at their expense and then wait for closure, which sometimes can take months, to get reimbursement on their on what they did for their home. So Director Gunther and I met with Assembly Member Alex Lee back in early April for a tour of TP2. And at the end of our meeting, we were going over issues for our water district, and I proposed this idea to him, and he said, I'd really like to get behind this, so give me a firm proposal. The other comment I would make is it's dangerous to make this universal, because that shows a lack of understanding of what's going on in the legislature right now and with grant programs, that you don't want the wealthiest people in society taking advantage of this. They can still go through a BOSCA program or something, but ideally what I would like to see, and I think in talking with different legislators about the possibility of this, we really are maybe talking about up to middle income in our community as a first effort. And this is not specific legislation just for ACWD. This is to offer a statewide program to meet the governor's goals by 2030. And that means really accelerating the replacement of turf. We need to turbocharge the effort in California. That's the way I look at it. And that's why I propose that we try to work with our local legislators to see what they feel comfortable with in terms of proposed legislation. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree on both sides. It's hard to say, but I think my fear is the income qualified is going to cut out a lot of people. And I agree with Director Sethy that, you know, certain folks here have the ability to just do this, but even middle income really don't necessarily have the ability to do this. And they're left out a lot at the state level. You know, all these programs are low income, super low income, and everybody who's just above that line is out. And a lot of our retirees are above the line. They don't have the money to do this either. So I think if we put that in a proposal that we shoot for, let's say, a middle income level, we probably should identify a level. And I would say a middle income level, whatever that may be, because there's this misconception that, you know, Union City, Fremont, Newark areas got all this wealth. And we go the gamut through here. But a lot of the folks, you know, they don't qualify for help on tap. We just move along, and this state funded by granting, as Director Sethy mentioned, us to be able to initiate something where a resident could come and say to us, say, look, I want to do this. I qualify in that middle income level. I think that's where we really score big. And not that I don't want the low income done either, but I really like to see if we can get that, because otherwise.
Well, let me offer this idea, because I've put a lot of thought into this and also explored what other water districts are doing and talked to legislators, including Alex Lee. So I don't think we get to determine what that income level is in a statewide program in putting forward a proposal. If we say income qualified, it's going to be negotiated in the legislature. They're going to determine what the cutoff point is. And so the idea is, let's just get a program off the ground and identify what the obstacles are in place for the average homeowner. You know, all the hurdles they have to get through. And so let the legislators decide themselves what they feel comfortable is proper for income qualified. I can't even say what that is.
Can I at least at minimum, to speak up for our customers, can we ask for regional income qualified? Low income in the Bay Area is very different than low income in Central Valley. So I understand state legislature probably would like the flexibility to debate and define what income qualified is. But if this is a wish list time and I get to throw things in the bucket that I want, then I would say, if it's possible, consider the concept of regionally income qualified, because we do have customers that could barely make the ends meet in our service district area, but in the Central Valley, they probably would not be considered as low income, right? If you look at the statewide average benchmark, they probably earn way too much. So it's my wish list if we could do regional income qualified, but I will let staff decide, since I am definitely not as familiar with state legislature and their thought process as Director Sethy and staff and other board members who are much familiar with this. But it's a wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Huang. So I see a hand up from Mr. Nishimura. Please.
Yes, so I guess after listening to Director's comments, I think one needs to look at what is the ultimate desired objective, right? Is it income redistribution, or is it maximizing the amount of turf replaced, right? And if the objective is the latter, then targeting the program towards those that are most likely to take advantage of it and replace the most square footage of turf and reducing the water consumption should be the objective of the program. Thank you.
Additional comments?
Yeah,
Kelly.
Mr. Abreu, I see your hand up. Mr. Abreu?
Excuse me. I'm not an expert on lawn replacements, but I do know how to. I have driven around Newark or Fremont and wherever, and what I've seen is there's a lot of brown lawns in Fremont. There's a heck of a lot of brown lawns in Newark or Union City. So there's, practically speaking, there's not much from what I can see, there's not much to be saved. If it's already brown, you're not going to reduce the water consumption anymore. But you would make it prettier if you go to Pleasanton, which I was there yesterday, I think it was. Their lawns are all green, but they have the lowest water rates around. It's their grass is beautiful. I admire it, but it does take water, I guess. But then the most, the goal here. I don't know. Once again, I'm not up on the details of these programs, but if you go to San Diego and look at their lawns and get up close and personal with them, they're beautiful. They're low water. They're pretty. They're not brown lawns. There are all kinds of native plants everywhere. It's incredible. I don't know how they did this. I don't know what it costs. But you don't have to have brown lawns. You can have really pretty stuff going on. I don't know how expensive it is. It's amazing. But I think that Fremont is kind of in Newark and Union City. We're kind of in the middle. We're not Pleasanton. We're not throwing water on green lawns everywhere, and we're not San Diego because we don't have a lot of our lawns are not that pretty. Thanks.
Well, in fact, San Diego Water Authority was one of those agencies that received state water grants for a direct install program. There's an additional incentive here for people to replace brown turf that doesn't get watered, which is the increase in their property value. That is, a real factor when it comes to beautifying your property. You're increasing your property value. So I think you have more than enough comments from the board. I hope we can initiate some discussions with our local legislators and try to move something forward.
Just one brief one. Every one of these programs seems to come up with a different definition of affordability and low income. There was an effort out at Feinstein's office to use an IRS code, which would give a more standardization. And John Watts, who is probably a really sharp guy in DC, has come up with a standardized form that's used in the last several bills that have come out of Feinstein's office. So I would encourage the state legislature to follow the same track and come up with an independent reference to identify what is a qualified recipient of these programs and who is not. And in the end, we're not going to solve the water problem in California 1 yard at a time. It's not a lot of water in the big picture. My take. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and feedback.
This is great. We really appreciate this feedback. It's exactly what staff was looking for. There's a wide range of options here. And so what our next step is going to be talking to local legislators about their level of interest and the points that are important to them for an author or sponsor of a bill. So we can kind of see where there's alignment. So this has been super helpful. Thank you very much. Mr. President, we've got a couple of other items under GM reports.
Please go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Ahrens is going to share a little bit about some upcoming local hazard mitigation plan meetings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Staff want to provide the board with some upcoming public meeting information that will be hosted here at the Water District. As you may recall, the district's been engaged through an MOU with the cities of Newark, Fremont, Union City, and Union Sanitary District to develop a tri-city multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. The purpose of the plan is to reduce long-term risk and loss to people and property in the tri-city area and bolster community resilience in the face of future natural disasters. It also provides eligibility for future grant funding for that to become available. The public has an essential role in the planning process. It is encouraged to attend and participate in a series of public meetings. The planning committee, which is the lead group putting this plan together, has held several public meetings to date in Fremont, Newark, and Union City. And the district will be hosting planning committee meetings number 3 and 4 on September 19th and 20th. The meeting on Tuesday the 19th will be from 1 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And on Wednesday, the meeting will be held from 9 a.m. to noon. Both the meetings will be held here in the ACWD boardroom. These meetings will focus on identifying mitigation strategies for the risks that have been identified. These are working project team meetings, which are open to the public, and the public is encouraged to participate. Just want to let you know those will be occurring next week. Thank you.
Can we get an email on that as well? As board members, could you please give us an email, a separate email?
Sure, we can do that. Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, just making sure there's no other questions on that item. Yep, couple of quick things. One, just in response to a request for an interview by the San Francisco Chronicle, Michelle Walden and Leonard Ash yesterday were interviewed by a reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle. It was about groundwater, and it was about recovery from the drought. And so this report has been talking to a number of agencies in the Bay Area, and tentatively that the schedule is to print that article on September 20. So we'll be watching the news for the great insight that's been provided by our staff to the media. Finally, perhaps most importantly, we have a couple of historians here on our board, and you remember that plaque in the back of the boardroom that has directors on there. It's got some general managers on there, and a couple of our eagle-eyed directors looked at the dates associated with the various directors and their service and said, hey, some of these are wrong. They don't make sense. So we went back to original documents and confirmed every number on there, made a number of changes. There were discrepancies. They were based upon when the director's service first started versus when they were elected, because some of our directors in the past were appointed and then later elected. So we had kind of a mix of those dates on that plaque originally, but now the plaque reflects the date of service. However that service began or ended, that's what's reflected on the plaque. So just wanted to follow up on that critical item. Okay, that completes our general manager's reports.
All right. So we'll move on to Item 7, Director's Comments, Reports on Meetings Attended, and Agenda Item Requests. And the first item, 7.1, is really not on Aqua. It is related to the Los Vaqueros Reservoir JPA board meetings. And I'm going to report on both the August meeting and the September meeting that was held yesterday, both of which were held at Zone 7 Water Agency in Livermore. And so I just wanted to quickly update the board. Not going to take you through all the agenda items that we're dealing with. Our meetings generally run from 9:30 to 12 noon once a month. So I wanted to bring everybody up on the cost estimates first of all. And these are the adjusted costs as of June 2023. And you'll note that the overall cost of the project has increased from 1.3 to 1.44 billion. But this still does not reflect a major delay that is going to occur on the dam construction. So it's going to delay things by a year because the Department of Dams and Safety notified the project managers that we have to build a cofferdam behind the current dam before the work can be done. So they're only estimating right now, but they're going to try to clarify figures for the board at the next meeting. It appears as though the overall cost of the project will now be about 1.57 billion. So you can see the construction schedule. Of course, the Transfer Bethany pipeline is of key interest to us, and I asked a set of questions yesterday about why the design phase is taking more than 3 years. And so,
Land acquisition.
excuse me?
Land acquisition. I'm sorry.
Well, one, we have to have the money provided by the California Water Commission under what they approved, and only then can that trigger land acquisition. And as you can imagine, there's quite a number of parcels between the reservoir and getting down to Los Vaqueros Reservoir and getting down to Bethany Reservoir. So that's why that is taking so long. And then I wanted to point out on the backside on the funding schedule, does you see the various steps that we have to go through. The top line is really with reclamation. That's the section 106, the biological opinions, the record of decision, etc. So we're not expecting the actual California Water Commission full funding until, let's see here. Toward middle of next year. We already are receiving monies from them for preliminary work. Two things on the schedule here. The Contra Costa Water Board and East Bay Mud informed us that they actually feel we're not at 25% on the backstop agreement between the two agencies. Both directors indicated that they felt it was closer to 5%, and they're disappointed that they can't get their two staffs to pull together a proper agreement. That's one of the dependencies here. And then everybody chimed in on the service agreements. I know Mr. Wunderlich is very involved with this effort, and I will just state what Director Ritchie did from San Francisco PUC, that this is the single most important thing that we have to work on, because nothing else can move forward until those agreements are done. And I agree with him. So that's a brief update. Are there any quick questions? Okay. Number two, I attended the Aqua Region 1 program tour of the Calpine geothermal operations up in Middletown, California. It was a full day tour. It was an incredible tour. I have grown up here in Fremont. I always have heard of the geysers. I thought it was a small, power plant near Geyserville. That's what I thought. But no, in fact, it is 45 square miles, the size of San Francisco, in hilly terrain. It reminded me of going through the N3 Ranch. You're just going up and down major hills. It looks like the moon when you're there, with pipelines running all over the place. I have been in massive oil fields in Oklahoma and Texas and the Middle East too, working on high-tech business. And I've never seen anything like this. So I'm going to just send down 3 maps here. If anybody wants to go through the folder of the materials that we had, you can go through it. I'll leave it right here. I will, as I know we have 3 closed door sessions, I'm trying to make this quick. If you go to www.geysers.com, you can see all the presentations. There's a nice 50-year anniversary film of the operations, and really good scientific explanations of how they do things. In general, what they are doing is they are drilling wells down 4,000 to 10,000 feet to where there is steam and water underground above the magma of the earth, where they heat things up. And this is one of the best water recycling projects I have ever seen. By the way, it's the largest geothermal operation in North America. So they partnered with the city of Santa Rosa and nearby communities on sewage treatment, which those cities had to put building moratoriums in place because they didn't have enough capacity and it was becoming dangerous to release it into the Russian River and other things. So they partnered with Calpine and they built a 45-mile pipeline going up 3,000 feet in elevation to the geyser operations, where they inject that water down into injection wells down to the layer of the earth where it heats up this water. And you can't believe the size of these turbines. They're huge. And they are, when the steam comes up, it's running around 350 to 400 degrees, but with the pressure, it's driving these turbines. And it's a fascinating place to go to. It's entirely closed to the public, but once a month, except for the dead of winter, when the roads are really muddy up there, you can go on a public tour. The tour schedule is on the website. I highly encourage anybody who wants to go on a really good field trip for a day, take the route that starts at Santa Rosa. That happens 3 times a year. That's an easy drive up to Santa Rosa. And then you get to go on this really wonderful public tour. And they have one of the finest customer educational centers I've been around. You know, we spent a couple of hours there, and absolutely, totally fascinating. And I honestly, I felt like I was on the moon. When you're walking by all the fumaroles and everything, and steam coming out, and sulfur everywhere. So fascinating. And I learned a lot about our water industry in California from that, and what a really smart water recycling program can do. Well, by the way, they take the solids now down to Fairfield, where they are processed into fertilizer and then redistributed through the wine country. So you know where you're getting good wine from. Director's reports from Aqua. Just to let you know, on item 7.4, I was unable to attend that conference at Stanford because I was dealing with a funeral. But I'll close with comments on the annual conference for CSDA. I attended several of the very informative sessions. I just want to highlight 2 that I thought were where we really can learn and leverage the materials that were in these sessions. One is on ADA website compliance. And around Silicon Valley, I'm hearing more and more about the legal lawsuits against major corporations. And now they're going after public entities where you have to upgrade your websites by certain federal and state laws that are now in place for ADA website accessibility. And so I handed off all those materials to Mr. Stevenson so our staff can get on top of that. And I'm hoping that we can bring this back like to the LICA committee at some point and look at how we're going to address upgrading our website, because we don't want a lawsuit. And there's a set of law firms out there like Shankman that came after us that are just going down one by one and suing people. They sued 1,000 wineries last year, as one example. So the other one I attended, which I found equally fascinating, was on IRS tax audits of special districts. And I'll hand off those presentation materials to Mr. Wunderlich tomorrow. And this was presented by two of our general counsel's colleagues from Hanson Bridget, Judith Boyette and Michaela Habib. And they did an absolutely excellent job. And what they were pointing out is that the IRS has become super aggressive now against public agencies. They were ignoring them for a long time, but now they're coming after public agencies, especially when it comes to payroll issues, retirement programs, rehired annuitants come back to work. And they went through quite a list of issues that the IRS agents come in to investigate. And I think one of the things that was most important that I learned is that even our auditors for our special districts are unaware of what they're really looking for. And so it was really, it was very educational to see from a legal standpoint and from the IRS standpoint what they're looking at. And so I'm hoping that we can share this with our current audit team as we complete our last fiscal year audit. So that will close it. Very good conference overall. And I always learn a lot. And I'm always, the thing I look for every time I go to CSDA, I want to bring something back that will make this district better. And so for each of these sessions, I feel like I brought something of value back here. Thank you.
Start here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the CSDA, there are actually two. Would it be best just to cover both, or we'll go through
Yeah,
those?
go ahead. I have no more reports.
All right. CSDA, Monterey had one of the record turnouts. The general sessions were, as usual, were motivational speakers and occasionally underwhelming. Although there was a interesting talk, I'm told, on the from someone from Pixar on how to do organizations. There was an interesting discussion in general on AI, which I thought was well presented and showed the strengths and weaknesses of AI and how one who is confronted with an AI presentation, it's always best to ask a few follow-up questions. You'll quickly realize if it is, if the initial responses were had any basis at all. And I found that quite humorous. On the California Data Water Summit, it's a 2-day conference in Stanford. They are struggling to try and find out how to apply data in the system. I left there thinking, being reminded that I remember when we were taught in college, I was taught in college, that a well-placed, designed sampling effort can give you the data necessary to meet your operational criteria. But now we're getting universal data, and we're trying to see what to do with it. There was a section on the new water loss legislation. It started off as water loss, for a while was non-revenue water, and now they're back to the term water loss. And they're going into excruciating detail and asking districts to provide information on various water uses in their district. To what end, is at least one puzzled, but they are developing it. Expect it'll take them 4 or 5 years to get a database that they can actually use. But the one that left me bewildered was a request to know how much water is used in our urban areas for edible plants. Now, I know some of these might be smoked, but apparently there's an edible component. It is an exercise in how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's unbelievable what the bureaucrats have turned this into, and will be imposing this on each of our water districts, including ACWD. Thank you.
No comments from me?
So I also attended the CSDA conference in Monterey, and I'll just highlight a couple of the sessions that I went to. One was on alternative delivery models. That one was a little bit more for, I guess, personal education. They ran through some use cases for using design build and progressive design build models. Obviously, we've utilized the design build for the Alvarado Niles seismic improvement program. So I just got a chance to learn from other districts on how they evaluate those different models. The other one that I was going to touch on is actually the same session that Director Weed touched on, which was the session on AI. Really, really fascinating to learn about how other districts are using AI, especially as it comes to writing newsletters, writing any information that's public facing. AI does a decent enough job right now, ChatGPT specifically, in developing just kind of good structures for presenting materials. The one area that I think was more interesting to me, because I don't know that we would use ChatGPT to write public facing materials at ACWD, but they talked a little bit about a new tool that Microsoft has developed that I've played around with a little bit called Copilot. And Copilot is a data analysis tool that utilizes Microsoft's AI tools to integrate with Excel, Access, and other Microsoft Office products, where you can easily analyze data and create models that are presentable and just give you a lot more insight into data than you otherwise would be able to manually. Copilot is still a developer tool, so it's not something that we can utilize right away. But in my mind, as we start to think about receiving a lot more data, especially with AMI, I think a tool like Copilot will give us a lot more insight into customer trends and just other things that we might not otherwise be tracking. So that's something that I'm definitely on the lookout for. I've used Copilot before just as a raw developer tool, found it really interesting. I think once it's formalized as a product, it might be something interesting for us to look into. I think it's part of the Microsoft Office suite. But yeah, those are two sessions I wanted to report back on. Thank you.
I'd like to echo the Copilot program was extraordinary.
Yeah.
You ask a question, you're showing a spreadsheet with all these numbers. Verbally, you ask a question, and suddenly the data pops up at you with certain things. You ask it to put in graph form, ask you relationships between two different issues. It all pops up and it's graphed automatically without having to really have any comprehension of what numbers are. It'll do it for you.
And actually, the example that they gave was during strategic planning, especially for organizations that are much smaller, that don't have analysts on their team. I think tools like Copilot and just AI in general will enable them to do a lot more with a lot less. And ACWD for sure can take advantage of that.
HAL 2.0 is coming.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you for all those reports. I'm going to ask our general counsel, Mr. Miyake, to read us into closed session on 3 items.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. It's now 7:18 and the board is going to convene into closed session for 3 items tonight. Item 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957. threat to public services or facilities, consultation with Director of Engineering and Technology Services, Director of Operations and Maintenance, and General Counsel. Item 8.2 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one potential case. And item 8.3 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D1. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, name of the case, Alameda County Water District versus 3M Company et al. Case number 222 AV 55555-CIV MDL number 2873. We can now convene into closed session.
All right, so we are
Convene.
So we have reconvened in the boardroom at 9:50. Is that what I'm looking
I
at?
have 9:41 on my
9:48. And I'm going to turn it over to our general counsel to summarize what we concluded in closed door session.
Great, thank you, Mr. President. The board convened in closed session for 3 items. Item 8.1 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957, threat to public services or facilities, consultation with Director of Engineering Technology Services, Director of Operations and Maintenance, and General Counsel. In that closed session, no action was taken. We move on to 8.2 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one potential case. No action was taken in that closed session. And our third closed session, 8.3, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D1. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, name of the case, Alameda County Water District versus 3M Company et al. Case number 222 AV 55555-CIV MDL number 2873. And in that closed session, no action was taken. And that concludes our open session reports.
Any last minute board comments? GM comments?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to conclude the meeting at 9:50 PM.
All right. 9:43.